An apple a day keeps the doctor away, but a glass of OJ keeps the adversary at bay. Here's our job.
Hey, it's time for a glass of OJ. I'm Oddjob.
And I'm Robert Wagner, or Mr. Minion.
So, basically, we're out here in wonderful, hot, not humid Las Vegas.
Yay.
So, as a Midwesterner, the humidity is terrible. And I always tell people, it's a dry heat, but it means something. It's really a different heat when you come out here. And it makes conferencing in the summer a lot more enjoyable when you don't feel like you're swimming every time you step outside.
Right, yeah. The heat isn't so bad, like you said, but I don't want to be in the sun for very long. The sun is
true.
Very burny.
And it's definitely beautiful at night.
Right.
Sometimes you get that breeze come through.
Yeah.
But I've been coming here now for off and on, but for the most part, 10 years. DEF CON 20 was my first DEF CON.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I've been coming here that long. A couple years later, I discovered B-Sides Las Vegas. I was like, oh yeah, let's go there. And but then, we call it Hacker Summer Camp for a reason. It's not just DEF CON. It's not one conference. There are so many things happening.
Yeah. And they all
Vegas.
Overlap, which drives you crazy too, yes.
It is impossible to do everything at Hacker Summer Camp. So whether you're here or not, you're always feeling FOMO.
I have a friend who is kind of got a system for himself where he's like, I just set a goal to do at least one thing that I planned to do during the week, right? So make it to one talk, make it to one village or something like that. And then he kind of lets the tides pull him to wherever else.
I like that. I like that setting. And, that's kind of interesting to think about that, you have to really plan your adventure if you're going to try to do a little something at everything.
Yeah. Or know a lot of people that are good at planning adventures and then just go with that flow. That's another good. I just got a text today. Someone's going to see Keanu Reeves' band. And nothing I would.
He has a band?
Yeah, Dogstar. It's.
I didn't know he had a band.
They're playing right here in Vegas. Apparently, they're really good.
What genre are they?
Rock. Okay. Rock, maybe alternative. I don't know how he
cover band or original music.
Original music. Yeah.
Oh wow,
yeah. He's great apparently, and I didn't. I found it out a couple of years ago, but I was just as shocked. I'm like, what? And he makes his own motorcycles too. Right? Yeah. So
and he hacks the planet in Cyberpunk.
Right. Yes. He's a role model for us all.
Exactly. He's a Renaissance man of the 21st century.
He really is. So, but someone said this, and I'm like, oh, should I go? And I'm like, what do you mean, should I go? Opportunity just plopped in your lap. Of course I'm going. So.
But and so over 10 years, how long have you been coming out to Hacker Summer Camp?
So my first DEF CON was number 19. So
right before me. So that had to be 2013, I think.
Yeah, and it took me forever to get there. It was very funny. I started off my career as like a third shift SOC analyst, and back then I wanted to go to trainings and conferences, and I had already been to some of the more commercial ones that you usually find out about first. Yeah. If you're in the corporate world. So I was working for a bank, and I'd asked my boss, can I go to DEF CON? And my boss is like, what's that?
Yeah,
what's that was his first response.
Is this a military thing?
Right.
What is this?
And I'm like, I'm all excited and starry-eyed. And I'm like, it's this cool HackerCon in Las Vegas. Denied. And I was bummed. So one of my friends was just like, oh, you should go to ShmooCon. And it was ShmooCon 3 that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you could still get tickets easily.
Before the F5 party.
Right, they didn't sell out in 3 seconds. They sold out in like maybe 3 weeks. And so I revised my tactic and I said, boss, can I go to ShmooCon? And he said, what's that? And I'm like, it is an information security conference in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
Bam, approved.
And it's fun, the history of DEF CON from a Fed perspective. I'm not a Fed, but just reading declassified files from the FBI, CIA, NSA, they write about operations that they've had at DEF CON. To kind of infiltrate and try to figure out, okay, what are they doing over there? They're hackers, and so what's going on? And then it kind of just I think it kind of just turned into being they plan these special operations, but really they're just wanting to come and enjoy the conference. And I definitely think Spot the Fed definitely grew from that kind of understanding of like, yeah, you're the feds, you're here to filter. We know who you are.
Does anybody even play Spot the Fed anymore?
It's pointless because so many feds just come here anyway. Like, you know, and so many people who are hackers became feds, right? And so it's kind of this, not revolving door necessarily, but it's kind of this revolving door now where feds really source hackers now, because they've started to learn and understand what we are, what's going on. They don't think hacker and immediately say criminal.
And looking for people to put into jail.
Exactly. Although I will say about 5 or 6 years ago, I did have a call with an FBI analyst locally in Indianapolis where I said, "Oh, we're a hacker conference over here," and he's just like, "Hackers? Why are criminals gathering?" I'm like, "That's not what I said." He's like, "Well, hackers are criminals." I'm like, "That's not true." And
this was only a few years ago?
This was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, wow, this person must be really old school.
I would have expected that 15 years ago.
Yeah. I think I don't know how close this person was to retirement, but I think this person was pretty far along in the FBI and everything. And so that's where they were. But, it was kind of interesting. I was kind of trying to do a little education. I kind of figured, okay, this is a lost cause and I'm just going to hope I'm not on a list now.
We probably all are.
Yeah, right. So DEF CON 19, I went to DEF CON 20. 19 was at the Rio as well, right?
It was, yep.
Yeah. So very different feel.
I loved the Rio, by the way.
I love it. That was the best. Star Trek cons at the Rio. Like, there's so many great conferences that go to the Rio.
Yeah.
It's a really great layout. It's just one hall that goes all the way back, and you can lay out things really well there.
And folks might not understand how important the layout is, right? Having this sort of central point that almost all the traffic goes through makes it really, it's so big now. 30,000 this year, something like that?
30, 40, it's up there. It's really Gen Con level. Right.
So having
I'll make a comparison to that later.
Nice. So having a central point that sort of all the traffic goes by makes it so much easier to meet up with people, but also to just kind of sit down and make sure that you're going to see a lot of your friends. Instead of hunting them down, just sit there and eventually they walk by. At Rio they did.
Yeah. And when you were at the Rio, you really just had a contest room where you did your activities and contests, got all your internet points or offline internet points. And then you had the village room and you had the different villages. And maybe there was a couple village rooms areas. Back then there was like the packet hacking village. There was lockpick. There was, I think people had started bringing in smart devices and things like that, smart toasters, and those were starting to really become popular, and so people were bringing those in to hack around with. Social engineering village, there was different types of villages there, but they were really all kind of contained to like a fairly big room. Like it was a big conference hall room, but you could contain most of the villages in one of those halls. And then you had a vendor hall where people like No Starch, artists, other people peddled their wares and things. And I picked up some cool stuff from Hack 5 back in the day and No Starch. A lot of my collection came from DEF CON because that's the only place I could find it. Then DerbyCon I found it. And
Sparrow's always a fun place to visit.
Oh, absolutely. Expensive as hell, but it's always worth it. Those picks take a long time to break.
Yeah, but now we've got villages across how many buildings? Hotels?
Yeah. Well, and so it was contained at the Rio, and of course there were off-site parties, all kinds of events and things. But then I think it was DEF CON 22 or 23 where they went to Bally's in Paris. And they kind of had the two split.
Yep. Although there was a while it was in Caesars. There was a while like in between.
That was right. Really?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Oh man, it's been so long. I hope I'm remembering this right, but I think it was Rio, then Caesars for a while, which wasn't too bad either because it had the center bar, and the lobby bar then was right off of that, so that made a good central flow as well.
Gotcha.
And then there was the year they stuck all the googly eyes all over and stickers all over everything, and I think that pissed Caesars off.
Oh yes.
But then then all of a sudden it was like maybe some in Caesars and maybe Rio.
I thought I remembered Rio for DEF CON 2021. I thought it was 2022. I thought it was 22 and 23 was Bally's Paris, and then we went to the Caesars, and then we went back to the Bally's Paris, and then we added added the Tropicana, I think.
Oh, God, yes.
And so that added that. And then Caesars Forum, and then that was kind of towards the pandemic, then the Forum was coming up.
Yeah.
And then that was announced that we were going to be at Caesars Forum in 2020, and then, the big pause happened.
Right.
and that happened, and whatnot. But it was very interesting because then they kind of divided the content, right? So you had kind of talks over there, and then the chill out village and vendors over here. And so you had all these people that were walking. Luckily, they were connected buildings, but you had this long walk between the two.
Which was so crowded. I mean, it was not wide enough to...
You had goons literally like within eyesight of each other, just lined all the way between, just so you just followed the goons.
Right.
Follow the line of goons, and you'll get to the other con space.
Goon breadcrumbs. Yes.
So that was interesting. I think they made a lot of people goons who usually aren't goons that year because they needed that kind of line there.
Now, one nice thing that I actually do like about having it at the Forum is that last night, a whole lot of parties were all you could walk from party to party to party. And that was kind of cool. You could go from GothCon to QueerCon to the chill out room, and then
there was kind of just a DJ out in the open, just kind of doing that. And
I think Dual Core was actually playing in that that hallway space. The night before. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so it's just amazing how much it's changed, because now we're at Forum, I think they still do Flamingo, and I think they have the Link, and I think there's still like 2 or 3 other places they still had to go because Forum's still not big enough.
Right.
And Forum's like a really huge, place.
Right. Now the Link bar seems to be becoming that sort of central locus, although it's not centralized, but it seems to be where everybody can kind of get to, and it is too small to contain everybody. So
I was going to say,
overflowing
the Paris casino floor was really good for when it was Bally's in Paris, because there were some big bars there.
Yes.
Then you could just go from ring to ring and kind of go, oh, my friend's over there, and let's sit on this high-heeled shoe, and let's talk, and so it was a lot more social, and I think that's mostly what you and I like to do. I think half the time at these conferences anyway. People say, are you going to DEF CON? And I've been gifted a badge, so this is nice. But it's like I'm here to meet my friends. I'm here to see people, even if I don't go to the con itself. LobbyCon is huge. Being able to go and do this kind of stuff is huge, and that's really one of the big appeals. And frankly, me starting out, 10 years ago was important because I got to meet people.
Yes.
I'm a bit more outgoing than your average newbie, Infosec guy.
A bit.
But I was kind of judicious, like who I reach out to, because there's a sample size big enough that there's some nefarious actors here.
Sure. Yep.
There has to be some nefarious.
Looking for new tactics.
I tell the cabbies, like, hey, turn your Bluetooth off, turn your Wi-Fi off. I'm not trying to scare you, and you don't need to do this the rest of your life.
Right.
But when it's this week, there's a sample size of like 30,000 of us here, and a few of us are going to do something nefarious. Your risk profile is higher.
Yeah.
Go ahead and just protect yourself.
It's still good advice. I just had someone asking me.
If you're not using it, turn it off.
They were like, I have to turn off my phone completely.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
that's maybe a little.
There's always how much, but I don't.
Femtocell hacking, I guess maybe, but now with 5G and everything, like things are definitely a lot more controlled.
And you get cancer, so.
And you get cancer, you get connected with your brain. I got chipped,
Did you? Yeah.
I got the boosted chip.
I have mine done with my dog, right? We both got chipped together.
Very good. So I think the back at DEF CON 20, I think they were around 18,000 people.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Probably a little more. LobbyCon probably had a lot more people, right? Including, but the people who actually went to get the badge, I think they said it was around 18,000 people. And then like the next year it was like 23,000 people. Like it really grew.
And quickly.
Grew. Yeah, expanded very quickly. And the feel that I felt when I went to 20 and 21, and I can't remember if 22, I don't think 22 is at the I think that's one of the years they moved it then. But 20 and 21, I felt like I could go and do everything.
Yeah.
I felt like I could say like, oh, let's do OpenCTF. Let's go to the packet hacking village. Let's go to the Wall of Sheep. Let's go, to some of these other staples, and let's learn Wi-Fi hacking. Let's learn hardware hacking. Let's do other things here, and you can learn a little bit. In fact, I gave advice to someone who was just starting. I was like, I don't want to color your experience here, but I was like, if you can, don't drill down necessarily into one thing. Experience a couple of these contests, a couple of these villages, and learn the skill, and move on to something else.
Well, on top of that, there are now lines for some of those villages,
and that makes it really hard.
To try and do everything. The AI village had a line going all the way down the hall, around the corner, and down another hall. And I heard it was really fun. One of my friends actually went through it. He said it only took him about a half an hour in line, but still, that's daunting, especially if you're new. You're like, well, like some people see a line and they just stand it regardless. But still, having to stand in line to do something you're not even sure what you're going to be doing when you get in there, right? Unless you actually read the description, which a lot of people don't. But
it's like, how many people get excluded from these events then because they can't get in,
and they don't know the system, and they don't
and so how many people end up coming to a conference and then essentially get to do nothing,
right?
And then they can't even get to a talk. They can't get to a village, really.
Lines for talks.
And then when you get to a village, it's a talk track too. And there's definitely an appeal to that. But it made me feel like, is this Black Hat? Like, is this a, corporate con where everything, every vendor is its own talk track too? Because now they all definitely give presentations and they have their mics booths, and in 5 minutes we're going to start the blah, blah, blah. And, we're going to have this world renowned blah, blah, blah in here, and so they're going to do that. And they get these beautiful screens that they do and they shoot presentations for. They give prizes away and swag. Villages are starting to become like that. And I remember DEF CON where I just sat down, no one gave a talk. If they did, it was usually, hi folks, we're going to talk about, how you get started doing this. Like, so what are you doing here? Let's show you a little something.
Okay, so
because they would do one-on-one stuff, but then sometimes you get entirely new people just sitting down. You don't have time to go one-on-one, even with all the people helping. You just got to go, okay, everybody, I'm going to just show you real quick here, and they'll have a just slideshow. I'm like, we're going to just show you, and I'm going to demonstrate. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. There's the first 2 challenges done for you there. So go reproduce that, and then go figure out the third one. We'll be around to see and help you out and things like that. Fantastic way to do it, right? People are learning. People are learning by doing. People are learning by asking their neighbors. People are learning by doing this. But now it's like, I'm trying to do this, but I can't hear because that person's talking about some research or some other thing that maybe they're trying to sell, but they can't say they're trying to sell, but they're maybe trying to pitch you. It's kind of a quasi-corporate con almost in that way, without any actual sponsors or vendors being around. It's weird.
My first opportunity to teach a workshop at DEF CON was actually the first year after, when they first were able to do a conference after lockdown. So it was 2021. Packet Hacking Village had asked me to do a investigating using Splunk workshop. And it was really funny. So we were still coming out of this virtual versus physical world and stuff like that. So they wanted to set up the village to do these workshops. And unless you were doing one of the Packet Hacking Village usually has some of those hands-on stations where you can go.
Yes.
But for the workshop I was teaching, they wanted people to be able to do it virtually as well. So the only way for me to teach my workshop in the village, which was physical, was to go back to my hotel and get online to teach it through their virtual platform. I think they were just using Zoom, but it was hilarious. I had to leave the con to go teach at the con.
I mean, and that's the thing is like, there's again so many things happening. Where there's so many offsite things. Cocktail Con, right?
Yeah.
So and we both went to that. I did about, I think I maybe did 3 drinks an hour there.
Oh my God, I had 1 drink.
PJ was really, really doing well. I tipped him well that night.
That's awesome.
Then I was like, I'm not really feeling anything. I'm feeling happy, but I'm not feeling like, oh wow, I'm overcome with,
inebriation. Yes.
I don't know, inebriation. And then I come back to Mandalay, and I'm like, I swear, all I'm gonna do is just grab some badges, and then I'm gonna go to the Flamingo and maybe hang out at Bishop Fox, and then I was like, and then I'm gonna go to Frankie's and hang out there and drink more and maybe give a badge to somebody, and then like I go like I need to lay down.
Oh, yep.
And then a big nap. I wouldn't say I passed out, but it definitely took a big nap then. And I woke up and was like, oh, wow. I need water.
Which is always, they never have nap rooms at cons, and with this one, there wouldn't be any anyway. But that's where sometimes having the hotel room really close to the conference can.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will. I mean, they'll get 3 hours of sleep the night before, so they will run back and take a nap. The social aspect, though, that's it's funny. You seem to have learned it quickly. When I first started going, honest to God, I had no idea why all these people were in the lobby the bar the whole time. And it's like, but guys, there's like Shmoo was my very first con, and I was in a talk every hour of every day because I was in learning mode, right? I just wanted to learn. And back then, the video recording wasn't as good. It may take months for it to come out. But so many folks now are taking on an approach of, I'm going to go to wherever is ephemeral, like the Village or something that they're not recording that. You got to get it right there.
Right.
And making that a priority. And then maybe see a talk or two that they really want to see right now before the recording comes out.
Especially if we want to try to ask a question.
Yes, right. And that is a great reason to go.
Yeah, that's a great reason to go. You get your question answered. But yeah, so I think, it's interesting to just kind of see how the DEF CON's changed. But then, you've got B-Sides Las Vegas. That's now in its 14th year, I believe.
And doing great. And it's still a heck of a lot of fun. So it's nice. It's like many other cons, like Circle City Con. It has a more intimate feel, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of. It's not so big that you can't find your friends. They actually their common area that they've set up works really well for just sitting down and seeing folks as they come by and saying hi. So that's a nice layout. They have definitely done a fantastic job of keeping that one going.
Yeah, and I mean they definitely please the sponsors because they're on the outside of that big common area where everybody comes through for meals, contests. And the villages then are also kind of on the peripheries.
Right.
So you can go over to lockpicking, you can go over to Pros versus Joes and see what they're doing. I've participated twice in Pros versus Joes.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh my God. As a pro or a Joe?
Well, the pros, so I found out really what it is. The pros are the red team.
Right.
The Joes are the blue team.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's pros who are blue teamers. like, what are you trying to do here? So, it was interesting concept of what they tried to do back in the day was like, hey, you folks who come here and, you're on the defensive side and you don't know what these red teamers are doing.
Yeah.
So here, let's show you what a pro can do with attacking and let's see if you can defend against it.
Fair.
And all you get is like these servers that have definitely already been breached. There's persistence everywhere. You get a pfSense firewall.
Nice.
You get very little things. And by the way, they have a gray team, which is basically users that have flags of their own that they're trying to do like work. They're trying to do work,
Right.
and then they've got phones.
Make it more realistic.
They've got phones, and they're calling, and then phones go down. The emails go down. They're using apps that need to be up. So they're really trying to simulate a real world environment, to a degree, so that the longer you have, I think it's every 5 minutes or whatever, the scoring server calls out and sees what services are up.
Right.
And you're not allowed. I think you're not allowed to do, because obviously all you have to do is say, oh, the scoring server, I'm only allowing that IP to reach that. You can't put firewall rules in like that. If you do, they have something in there that's reporting back what your firewall rule, and if they see that kind of stuff, they're going to disqualify you completely.
And it's so hard to tell that all of this is going on if you're just watching it.
Yes.
If you're in the midst of it, it's kind of easy. But all you see from the outside is a bunch of people furiously typing away.
And there's 4 levels of persistence that they do. There's the very basic, like, oh, I put a cron job in.
Okay, yeah.
And so every time you reboot the server or every time, every hour or whatever, it kicks back a shell.
Right.
And then there's, check your SSH keys. They may already be compromised. You may want to change those. That's kind of a second level. And then there's third and fourth where it's like, well, this service that is legitimate usually is not legitimate and is not it's a compromised binary. So you may need to replace it with the real one because because we have it to where it just kicks out a shell over Python or whatever and does some things. So they have like 4 or 5 levels of persistence. And one thing that they do, they usually do it at the very end. I forget if they did it during the first day as well. But what they do is they end up having the red team basically do a hot wash.
Okay.
And they say, here's what all we did. And here's things that nobody found.
Right.
Here's stuff that you found and you didn't know what the hell to do with it.
So it's a purple teaming exercise.
Yeah, and so they do that. And so I think the second time I participated, they did that first day. Hey, everybody, let's go ahead and give you the level 1.
Okay.
We're going to tell you what the level 1 persistence is. And that way, tomorrow, you're going to come in, and we recommend you do these things when you come in tomorrow. So that way now, okay, you get the experience of going in and making these changes. And then number 2, you get the possibility of looking for more. You get little hits to look for more.
And go for those number 2s now, yeah.
And then as you get more points,
Level
you can
2s.
actually use your points to buy a red team consultant.
Oh, really?
And they will come down and help you understand a little bit of what's going on. And they may even help you attack other teams. So they may specifically go after and just trash that team over there. It's kind of like the purple shell in Mario Kart. You know, it's like get the first place in line. It's like, okay, we're gonna just take them down entirely. And so there's a little bit of gaming the system that happens as well. There's the game within the game, that gets played. It's a pretty fun. It's very intense, but it's a very fun activity. I recommend anybody to do it for a first time. There's a team meeting. There's prep meetings well before Pros versus Joes where you meet your team, you practice.
You have to apply to be a Joe, right?
Yes, you do.
They only take so many, and it's a multi-day thing.
It's both days. You go and do that. If your team's good, they meet the morning of and do breakfast, or the evening before and try to talk a little bit about making sure your setups are good. And,
right.
So it's usually, I think it's about 6 or so people on a team. So it's pretty good. I think there could be improvements to the game as always, but very good experience overall. I think it's a wonderful thing, and Dichotomy and the team definitely have their work cut out for them every year with just running the VMs.
Right.
Because administration and running a platform is its own capture the flag or challenge and contest as well.
There's a ton of prep that goes into just something that from the outside, again, looks fairly simple, and it's incredibly complex what they put together. And
they bring roadie cases full of single U and 2U servers.
Yep.
And it's just that's what they're running. They're running ESXi or Proxmox or something else off that, and it's a lot to do. I've spoken at B-Sides once. I finally got to check that off my list that I got to speak at B-Sides Las Vegas.
Yeah, sweet, yay.
Did that last year. That was fun. But I usually don't go to talks at B-Sides Las Vegas. I don't go to talks at most cons. Unless it's that thing that I actually want to see that.
I went to a couple this year, and especially more than one of my focuses was they have a track called Higher Ground, HIRE, and it was all sorts of people giving career advice. So Kristen Renner was there, and other people acting recruiters, a lot of recruiters, just giving advice from their perspective. So and in the current temperature out there as far as careers go, I think that was well received because there's a lot of people that need help right now.
Between the big ones, you're talking Salesforce, Microsoft, Amazon, even like Cisco, Rapid7, some of the other folks who have been around. We're talking nearly $100,000 jobs lost. In tech in general. Over just the first 6 months of the year, so it's like how do we get this going? And we know what they're doing a lot of times is all they're doing is just firing and then rehiring, restructuring their roles. I don't want to spend time training you into this thing I need you to be and want you to be, so I'm just going to let you go and then put your job rec back out.
Yeah.
Which I find to be probably more expensive to source and hire another person.
I think so.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You could, I say just train someone, but you could work to see who can we train and mold into this over here. And it could be that they just go, I'm just not interested in doing that.
Yeah.
And that's valid.
and not interested in doing it is valid. I've seen so many companies let people go without even saying, I mean, most managers
give them the opportunity.
Yeah, well, or even looking for them. Most of your higher level managers and directors and VPs, they know the other people within the organization that may be looking,
right,
that may be a good manager to work for.
Yeah,
that kind of information that your underlings may not have is worth its weight in gold. Go and say, hey, talk to Mary over there. She's awesome to work for. Go have a conversation and see if you'd be a good fit for some of her roles. But a lot of companies won't even give their employees that kind of advice.
Yeah, and well, because a lot of times when you start having those conversations, it tips it off, right? And so then you have panic.
Well, I mean, even when they know it's coming and it is tipped off, why not give an opportunity before the layoff?
I agree.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree. And, you have this churn, but unfortunately, the tech sector, I mean, you got Microsoft and Amazon and Google. I mean, they even admitted they literally just hired people to just keep them from going to the other places.
What? Oh my God.
Just to like, like hoarding talent. We don't want, these are great, brilliant people. We don't need them giving Google great ideas and propelling their business forward, so we'll buy them. We're not going to give them anything to do, but they're going to sit around and collect a paycheck because it's a hedge investment or a protection against them rising above them in the market.
Do you think they're using an algorithm to figure out who those strategically...
I imagine someone out there has attempted an algorithm to figure out who's the ones to hire to ensure they don't come up with the next big thing that takes us out of the market on a particular product.
I want to know what to put on my profile.
Exactly.
I mean, like, he is way too dangerous to let to go to. I want to be algorithmically dangerous.
They didn't interview you. There are so many people that just went, they didn't even interview me. They just gave me an offer. I'm like, I think I know what just happened to you. They just hired you to keep you off.
That's great.
So if you just want to collect your paycheck, create a resume like that, throw it in.
And with all the people that are flooding the market right now, I'm having a lot of conversations with people about interviewing and everything else that's going. And I need to probably start my own Twitter handle. It's like interview nightmares or something like that. And people are sharing them. I mean, probably one of the most shocking ones. A friend of mine had been interviewing. And like a good interviewee, he had a list of really good questions, and he was going to town on him. He was asking the interviewer when the interviewer said to him, he was asking questions. I don't know if the interview said, "Do you have any questions for me?" But he went into question mode anyway. And the interviewer said, "Hey, we're not here to interview me."
Wow.
Right? And he was blown. And what that tells me is that, and I'm seeing this happen more and more, and I think it's wrong, to take care of getting people properly, filtered and evaluated. People are asking people who have no interviewing experience to interview a candidate.
Right.
Because they'll be part of their group or whatever, but not necessarily reporting to that person.
Yeah, give a structure. Give something at least.
And so these people have never been trained to interview.
Yeah.
So they go in and they think, well, my job is to find out if this person is any good, right? Not realizing that you have to be prepared to answer questions from that person as well. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, I started interviewing people without really any experience doing it. You got to do it at some point. But, I'd taken a lot of those advices, because there's more than just advice. There's a lot more of it. So even more plurally.
Advice-y.
Advice-y. So anyway, so I was looking at advice, like, what do you do? Like, and it kind of ran the gamut. Like, there's people who are like, oh yeah, here's basically a 20, question quiz you can give interviews. And it's just like, that's not really what I'd like to see in an interview. I don't want this to be a quiz.
Right.
Maybe a couple little, especially if it's the first round or a screening. Yeah. Couple little, do you know some of these very basic, is it worth our time even talking if you don't know what SSH is?
Sure.
And you're a network administrator, right? Like, okay, do you know what SSH is? I actually had that I've had interviews where I've talked to people and I've asked, how on the network can you tell if a host is up or not?
Okay.
Right? And then I finally filtered it down a little further and said, okay, what command might you run in Windows or Linux to see if a computer is up on the internet, if a system is up or something else.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, a command. Wow, I don't know that one. And I was like, do you know ping? And they get a blank look on their face. And then they go, oh, yeah, ping. But it was just kind of like, that wasn't a real trick question.
Right, yeah.
And you get interview nerves.
Sure.
I forgot what grep was in an interview. Someone said, you're trying to look through a list of, let's say, a gigabyte text file, and you need to find if there's social security numbers in there.
Okay.
What's a great way of doing that? I was like, well, I'm not going to be scrolling through that. They said, okay, that's a good start. Don't scroll through the whole thing. I said, I might run a search in it. Like, search how? I'm like, oh, you could load it into a word processor. Like, a gigabyte, though? That might take a long time to load. I'm like, okay, sure. I was like, oh, no. There's a command you could run that you can basically just search. And I'm like, what is it? It's not search, it's not find, it's not. I'm like, but it basically goes through, and then you can like filter that through, and you can provide a regular expression in there as well,
right,
to say this is what social security numbers look like and do this. I remembered regex and everything else, but I didn't remember grep. And they're like, great. That's called grep, by the way. I'm like, God, I can't believe I forgot grep. And they're like, no, but you explained what you were trying to do and everything.
Good. So they at least, yes.
And so I try to give the same courtesy if someone doesn't know this thing. And it's not arcane knowledge, but it's just sometimes we forget the stupid things.
Oh my! When interview nerves are kicking in, absolutely.
And so I attack it from the other side. Like I asked somebody, I said, it was basically like, what's ARP?
Okay, yeah.
So I said, let's say you have an IP address and you need to find a MAC address. What might you do?
Right.
And they're like, oh, that's DNS. I'm like, okay, no. And so I just kind of tucked that away. And I'm like, this may just be interview nerves.
Yeah.
And so then I take it the other route. And I go like, okay, I give you a MAC address and I need to give you, or I give you this or whatever. And then it just really turned into they didn't know what ARP was.
Was this an entry-level job or was this...
It was more tier 3.
Tier 3, okay.
It was like a tier 3 SOC analyst. So
for
they really should have known that.
I mean, I'm seeing
entry level, I could have forgiven it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, by tier 3, that
you might need to know the difference at least between ARP and DNS, even if you don't type that command every day. Especially if you're going to get confused with DNS. I don't want you doing DNS lookups and thinking you're getting MAC addresses.
Well, the other danger of not training people for interviewing and stuff like that. As I was doing some research for a talk I'm going to be doing at GERCON, actually, there are so many words that you and I might use because they've been so long part of our just our natural vocabulary, that if used in an interview or job rec setting, are coded for masculinity, for instance.
Yes,
and would deter or make a woman maybe not want to apply for that job so much. And it's basically trying to, without you knowing it, it's snuck into our language so deeply that you don't realize that you're saying words that are saying this job should be a job a man fills instead of a woman fills.
Yeah.
So those are some of the biggest dangers. That whole diversity thing. Not only do you have people that are untrained at interviewing, they're untrained at how to not discourage someone who would be a great hire from pursuing the job. And that's really...
One of the things I actually did with my recruiter for a recent hire I did this year was I said, I want you, when you give me resumes, to take their name off of it, redact their name, redact their city they're from or other stuff like redact that. I was like, and then if they have a college listed, just redact the college name.
Wow.
Because everyone's heard of Yale, MIT, Purdue, Duke, other things like that. Big Ten, so
right.
Duke. But anyway, you've heard of these colleges, Berkeley, so the big names. But when you get a historically black college, for instance, I personally don't know historically black colleges really well. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. But it can bias you because immediately when you see Harvard or Yale or MIT, there's already an excitement. That's interesting. An excitement. Your brain perked up a little bit and said, okay. And even if you notice that, there's still that unconscious selection that happened there. Whereas if you just take out the input, the bias function doesn't even get engaged, right? And so blocking that input, and I only interviewed, out of like the 8 or 9 people I interviewed, I think only 2 were white guys.
Oh, wow.
The rest were women, people of color,
Nice.
Different people. And, I got to at least have that conversation with different people, just looking at their resume and kind of just seeing, okay, what do they look like they've done the things that I want them to do, or do they look ready to jump in this? Because I like to do that too, is not just go, oh, well, who's already doing this?
Yep.
Like if you're looking for, senior architect or whatever, do you want someone who's been a senior architect for 8 years? Or do you want someone who's ready to be a senior architect?
Right.
There's good answers either way.
Yep.
But I like to give someone a chance. And it's just like, are you ready to step up to this?
Yeah.
And, I found someone who was, kind of really at that level already. They were definitely ready to go into it. But it was like, they needed to give that opportunity to get to this level. And they have a career path. And they told me about it. And they were passionate about it. And I was like, this person knows where they want to go.
That's awesome.
And so that was part of that. But it's important to do that. My recruiter, who happens to be a person of color, was just like, I am so happy that you are asking me to do this. Nobody else asks me to do this.
It should be de facto.
It should be de facto.
Blind resume review,
so
absolutely.
Just gives me initials,
Yep.
and that's it. That's the only way I can differentiate it, is just initials on resumes.
Fabulous. I saw that there's even some AI tools out there now that will go through your job rec to remove biasing language.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Someone even told me that DevOps or DevSecOps
Oh, really?
is kind of biased towards bros.
Oh, yeah.
Because DevOps culture is very male dominated. So if you say DevOps, there's a lot of non-males.
Just the word itself.
There's a lot of males that, or the non-males that might feel like, I'm not a DevOps person, like I'm not that. Right. And,
it does have this kind of military sound to it.
Kind of, yeah. And so, you even have to rethink things like that. And even if there's really nothing wrong with the word, from a, just looking at, well, that's just what it's called or whatever, you still have to examine, okay, but if it feels exclusionary to all these other people, there's something you still have to do to understand this.
Right.
Like we talked about master and slave branches.
Right. Yeah.
On the face, it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And hierarchically, that makes sense, and it perfectly describes what it's doing. But there are contexts behind these words that do exclude and feel, differently to different people.
And affect people emotionally.
And so it's like, you know what? It hurts us none.
Right.
To go main, secondary, or main and branch, or main and whatever, to do that, because that's also a good explanation of what it is. So, words are not prescriptive, they're descriptive, and so we can have many words to describe things. Yeah. And the way we describe things change all the time.
It's just a matter of learning to use the new language, which sometimes can be hard if you've been saying a certain phrase a certain way, right? Like, blacklist and whitelist.
Yes.
Black box and white box.
Yeah.
If you've grown up saying those it's like as a firewall admin.
What's your alternatives for black box and white box?
Transparent and translucent and opaque.
Opaque. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. That's even better.
Yeah.
Because white box, what is it like white? Is it blinding? What is it? I like that, but it's really about transparency. No, I really like that, actually.
Yeah.
Did you discover that one? Did you generally kind of...
I went through the thought process and I'm like, what can I call it? And I think I found other people who had come to the same conclusion, but I had done that for myself first, and then saw other people were using similar.
Cool. So you just learned a new word, folks. You can stop saying black box and white box now. But no, I really like that, and I very much now still I try to say allow lists as much as possible.
Right.
And when it comes down to it, it really is like black and white doesn't describe what it does.
Right. Yep.
And someone was really on the internet one day challenging me and be like, but no, blacklist is what we use in malware to describe something that's, bad and blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, did you just say bad? Great, bad list.
There you go.
What I think is interesting is, of course, we've talked about how B-Sides has changed.
Yep.
We've talked about a little bit about how, and it hasn't really changed too much. No. It's kind of really kept its core, and there's just always new things to do, though, it seems.
Yep.
DEF CON's definitely changed. Anyway, bad joke. But Black Hat. This was my first Black Hat.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
A vendor gave me a badge. You know who you are, and thank you very much. And so, I want to. They don't sponsor this, so I'm not mentioning them. Nor would I accept their money. But anyway, they gave me a badge, and so I got to go to peruse the vendor hall.
Yeah.
How long have you been going to Black Hat?
So, depending on how you look at it, I was a practitioner for a long time, and then I went to go work for some vendors. Yes, and when I started working for the vendors is really when I started going to Black Hat, but only on the trade show floor. So I've only been to the briefings once or twice because there's just not been enough time to get the briefings in as well while you're also trying to do demos or whatever it is, or have an executive consult, which is more of what I would do anyway. But in any event, things that I have seen change, well, it's certainly gotten bigger. Although one of the visually funniest years was the first year after lockdown that we finally were coming back, and I think it was 2021, right? When they finally mounted a new...
I think they tried in 2021 to do something.
And it was so underattended that, that big room, they didn't have enough to fill that big room.
Oh, wow.
So they'd taken all the vendors and put them in kind of like this area in the middle that was maybe a third.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So visually, you just kind of went in. It was like a ghost town. You expected tumbleweeds to go blowing down the aisles, right? Yeah, you expected like some booths to be boarded up and spray painted. My gut feeling for what I've seen as far as like the people that have gone through it's become more commercial over time. A lot of people are saying Black Hat's kind of RSA-ish now. Take that.
Because what did it used to be? So what did it used to be?
So my understanding, at least, and I probably don't. My understanding, at least, and I'm probably not the most expert, but what I had heard word of mouth was that there were a lot of people that couldn't go to DEF CON, kind of like I couldn't, because it was this scary thing in HackerCon in Vegas. So they created something that especially like the Govies and the more corporate world would see at being presented, not as like, oh, cool, let's get these hackers on. No, it was more like, hi, we're an information security conference. We just happened to be in Vegas. Happened to be run by the same guys who run it. But if you didn't look, you wouldn't know that. And it was just... and they take credit cards and POs and things like that, so you could also get receipts. One of the biggest things about going to DEF CON, especially when it was only cash, was you couldn't get a receipt for it.
Right.
Well, how do you expense that then?
Yeah.
So it was more corporate friendly, and it still has that same vibe. Now DT has sold that off, and I think since the selling off, I think it's even gone further down that route.
Yeah. But I'd agree, it's very RSA light.
Yeah.
RSA now is kind of Comic-Con, I say, but because it is. It's more like, oh, we're inviting a bunch of celebrities in to talk about cybersecurity and everything, rather than, and it feels like, wow, did I go to a Comic-Con convention and now Shatner and the cast of Star Trek or the cast of CSI Cyber's now going to talk about talk security to us, and it's like, what?
The first time I saw that too, I was like, why are... but you know what? To their credit, every celebrity, and I haven't seen too many because I haven't been to too many RSAs, but every celebrity I've seen doing a keynote up there, they did frame it in such a way to, they're storytellers at the end of the day, right? So they can't tell us too much about how to do security from their background, but they did tell a good story that was compelling in one way or another.
Yeah, and they inspire us in many ways. I mean, who hasn't wanted to yell out of a car window, "Hack the planet"? So we like those celebrities. We love those types of things.
Sure.
But then we make fun of Scorpio and Mr. Robot's very beloved. But it's just So Black Hat this year, there was a lot of vendors, and I kind of think just like RSA or anything, it's interesting to kind of go vendor, and see what they're doing, and see if you can figure out what they're doing, number one. But then number two, seeing what slogans we're using. What are the buzzwords we're using to catch people in?
Interesting. Okay.
I saw AI at the speed of DevOps.
Okay.
What? What does that even mean? AI at the speed of... Shouldn't DevOps be at the speed of AI?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or I was rubbing my brow for a while on that one, trying to figure it out, and I just moved on.
At least all the marketing people have realized that using slogans like "will make you completely secure."
I saw something very similar though.
Really
I saw someone going, and I wish I would have taken a snap to pic of it so I could remember it for this moment.
I wish I'd known you were looking for logos. I would have done something for you too. Yeah.
But it was just a matter of, they came right up to that line of saying, we make you, 100% secure. Stop every bad
stop
actor.
Every attack or
yes.
whatever.
Oh yeah, that's what I think. That's what it was. Stop every attack. Before it happens.
Don't do that, marketing people. If you need an advisor, I can help here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help you with your language.
Yeah, the FTC may even step in. Some of those things you think are puffery may not be puffery. So I saw all of that. AI was big. ML was big everywhere.
Yeah.
I kind of respected the people who said ML more than AI.
I do too.
And because it helps me understand they're not trying to go too flashy.
Yeah.
They're really trying to get down to it's data science driven, right? And we have these models we're building off of this. And that helps me understand. Whereas the more grifty ones are like, we have an AI model that can tell better than a human how to do that. And these are now starting to become very specific claims that even the FTC has issued 2 warning letters this year already, just kind of general to the industry and InfoSec, saying, and in technology in general, just saying, if you are making claims, very specific claims about the efficacy of your AI versus a human doing the same thing or other tools doing the same thing, and then you are asked to essentially prove this, part of that, you're going to have to open up the AI box and show how it works in a way. You can't claim secret sauce.
Wow.
You can't claim that's proprietary. You have to prove. You have to show somehow benchmarking or something that shows, this caught it better than these tools or these humans.
Almost treating AI claims and tools like medicine.
It's starting to,
which could be a very good path to take.
And it could become that. But I mean, it just from the false advertising perspective of you're making claims that you refuse to back up.
Isn't this country built on false advertising?
Yes. This really is the snake oil part of it, though. And the FTC is coming out to say, if you can't, not only can't you, back up your claims, but when you refuse. That is now making us want to go, we are going to investigate, and so I don't think I've seen an announcement so far that they've made some kind of investigation on, but people are on notice, and I was seeing stuff in Black Hat that I was like, you're really skirting the edge here, folks. If you're up close, if you aren't beyond it, you're skirting an edge here.
And what was the claim you saw? What could it do better than human?
It was just like, catch threats better than, any SOC analyst.
Okay. Interesting, yeah. I saw an actual demo of a guy that was using some of the open source AI tools. Like there's one called Chain Train. And so he had built it, his own LLM models and stuff like that. But it was quite interesting. So the whole thing was, how could you use this to do some SOC tests faster, right? So we loaded up with like some chats from Slack and all this other typical data that you'd get off of your endpoints. And then typical scenario, the person has logged in via the VPN from Osaka. And so posing the question to the LLM saying, hey, is so-and-so just logged in from Osaka? Is this okay? And just giving that basic question. And it going through quickly and checking, the fact that she had asked her boss if she could go to Osaka and take vacation to go to Osaka and a couple other things. And the AI was able to deduce quickly, yes, this seems to be okay. She's an engineer, and she was going to Osaka in the first place and putting this all together rather quickly to do decisioning.
Yeah.
And as I was talking about it, and he was talking about it, and then he brought up the fact that because he was trying to couch this into the revolutions that have happened in our past from technology, starting like with the printing press and agriculture and all that kind of stuff. And he pointed out that in every pivot in the past, like when agriculture took over, in the industrial age, took over a lot of manual labor, things like that, the one that this is taking over is human thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he's like literally he was saying, beware of 20-somethings, smiling 20-somethings, because his model that he's seeing could happen is that there's a lot of jobs that could be replaced by just people modeling well in AI to do all this decision-making stuff. And the thing that scared me about this, and he didn't say it, but if all of a sudden, a consulting firm can put several million people out of work in a month,
Yep.
we're going to have crime and war and
It can be very, it can change a lot.
Collapse.
Yeah, it can change a lot.
It may be temporary societal collapse until but a lot of people are going to die first.
Because what do you replace it with?
Right.
Because with every age, there was then complementary jobs that you had to do to keep like the machines running, and you still had to sweep floors, you still had to do other things, other work. It freed you up to do other work.
Right.
Now. I think AI is still at the point where it frees you up to do the other things. You're spent so much doing these weird, nuanced, tedious tasks, and you have to it's a case by case basis. You can let an AI go case by case, and now it frees you up to go do something else.
Right.
So I don't think there's going to be like millions and millions and millions, but I do think there will be impact, and I think there will be a lot of displacement. And kind of going back to that. How do companies and how does we as society train people, and how do we find them the other thing?
Right.
Or do we just free up productivity so much that money starts becoming so efficient, or energy becomes so efficient and everything, that we just start going like, actually everyone doesn't need to work for a living just to have a place to live and have healthcare and everything. Maybe we approach it not from the energy perspective for Star Trek, but just from the everything's so efficient and taken care of by machines that actually we don't have to compete against each other to work for resources anymore. We can just do shit we like.
Which would be so cool, and yet there's so many people that depend on the profit from those things that they're going to fight it tooth and nail.
Oh yeah,
having that sort of utopian society where there's like a what do they call it, a guaranteed like
a universal basic income, or just kind of it's housing. You just have a house,
and it's so cool, and yet so many people knee jerk on that and go, that's communism, right, or something like that, and it scares them that's
because they put the label that's perceived as scary on it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so there AI, big conversation out there. I saw some I saw a lot of MDR. MDR has taken over. In fact, it's kind of interesting. MDR, and I could do a whole video on this one. What is MDR? What's XDR? What's all these things?
Oh, I want to see that video.
Yeah.
Depending on which marketing person you're talking.
But MDR to me has basically been SOC as a service, but we took tier 3 out.
Okay.
And so we're not going to actually give you essentially dedicated or semi-dedicated resources to work with your tech people and employees to determine, are you really supposed to be on vacation right now, or in France and your phone's just logging in.
Right.
Those types they won't do that. You go do it.
Okay.
And many times I've seen MDR solutions or MDR services that are very kind of just extra people to call you when your tool kicks off an alert. And it's like, well, my tool could have emailed me.
Right, yeah.
Why should I have you? Now, they do triage. They do some false positive. They say, okay, this one you don't pay attention to, this one you don't.
They'll tell you they do triage.
Yeah. This one you don't pay attention to, this one. But there's still the level of tier 3 of like, well, there's tuning to do now. There's things to figure out. And there's definitely a customer base. It's a very small customer base, like the small, medium customers that, when they go and they see these things, they go, oh, great. I don't need a SOC. I don't need all these big things. I just need someone to kind of take some of the noise away and give me something that I can go work on.
Yes, right.
And that's where the value is. And you're seeing, I think you just saw it, Rapid7 just announced layoffs, couched in this kind of understanding of they're transforming their company. And what they're doing, I think, is they're not getting rid of vulnerability management, but they're instead deprioritizing it and prioritizing their MDR service, their SIM platform. Okay. And vulnerability management's just one of those plugins to it.
Yeah.
You're just one, instead of VM being the big thing, Metasploit being the big thing that Rapid7 was known for, over the last 5 years, they're like, oh, have you seen our SIM? Have you seen our MDR services? Have you seen our vulnerability? Have you seen our app pen testing services? So now they've got an MDR and there's all of these services around it.
Okay.
And so, the service bandwagon is definitely, every company is really racing to see how can we put service behind this.
Interesting.
Which is good because those are high margin, right?
Yeah.
You get high margin for service. Product you usually don't get very good margin for.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, it really is. Especially when you're like a value-added reseller. If you like can be like service oriented, high margin.
Okay.
Because you don't have other people taking stuff off the top or anything. Or technically you're taking a thin margin off the top of list price,
Okay.
So there's that. But if you're able to offer your services, your employee, your economies of scale, and you're extending that to your customers, you can charge almost whatever you want. There's a lot you could charge for. And then the product could almost be free.
Yeah.
You get the service, and then the product's just part of the service.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of loose in the way you can do that, and you can add a lot of value that way.
I wonder if Microsoft would end up, and Google for that matter.
They've started. They've already started a lot of their threat hunting, and they have other services that they're starting to build up. It would not at all surprise me to see Microsoft and Google bought Mandiant.
Right, they did.
So they already have managed defense. They already have their IR services, their managed defense services. So they already got it. They have a SIM now. Yep. It's Chronology.
Chronicle?
Or Chronicle, yeah. Sorry, thank you.
Yep.
Chronicle. So they're on that path. Microsoft is getting on that path too. Mm-hmm. The only person who doesn't seem to be doing that is AWS. AWS kind of is just running their infrastructure. Come on over.
Well, they're just hoping Alexa will be able to take care of it all.
Yes, that's their play. They're jumping ahead of them and saying, we're replacing your entire SOC with Alexa.
Alexa, secure my network. Oh, wait, did your Alexa just go?
I'm not able to do that yet, but in a few years. That's insider knowledge, Alexa.
Here's some results I found. Check it out.
And then one of the things I saw at Black Hat, one of the things I didn't see at Black Hat was dark web. And there were dark web companies there, but they didn't say dark web at all in their marketing materials. So Flashpoint, for instance, no sponsorship here, but at Flashpoint they do dark web.
Okay.
They go do dark web searches and keep you apprised as to what's going on, do some threat intelligence around that.
Did they have a booth?
They had a booth. And you could go. In fact, I went to Threat Connect and said, who do you know who does dark web? Like, I know you guys don't do it because you're a collector of intelligence rather than a provider of it.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, so Flashpoint, you ought to go talk to them. I'm like, they don't say anything on their booth. He's like, I know. Dark web's not seen anywhere. I don't know what's happened to dark web, but somehow in the marketing world, they've just decided collectively, it's just kind of come to that moment where everyone's like, let's stop saying dark web.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like just not using the term anymore.
Maybe people called it out for being FUD. Maybe it's like, oh, the dark web. And people were making too much of it, and so it became FUD. And now they talk about it from like ransomware prevention or leak identification, or they talk about those types of things. But it's dark web.
Yeah.
And so, so I was able to go to them and talk about that. And I'll kind of close Black Hat with this one thing. CrowdStrike was doing something that I thought was cool. Like, ooh, that's cool. But then I thought, I actually don't know if I like this. They were selling action figures of their threat actors.
Oh, yeah. I have seen that, yes.
So they have Fancy Bear. They have, all these other things. I think they had like 4 or 5 action figures. And I'm like, okay. So they used to do keychains. They've done, of course, cool art for all their threat actor names they have. And I thought that was kind of cool. But now it was like action figures somehow plugged it into me. I was like, okay, we're not talking about a cartoon here. We're not talking about like Hasbro, with Transformers or whatever, where the show is literally just to sell toys.
Right.
Are you making a profit now off glorifying threat actors? Like, are we cheering on threat actors here? Like,
if they truly are glorifying threat actors with toys, sooner or later you're going to get someone going, what is it doing to children too, right? Are we corrupting?
How do we think of the children? But there'll be a copyright takedown for that,
right?
Because I matched that voice so well. But no, absolutely, right. And so I mean, already they give threat actors cute names and things like that.
Yeah.
So you already wonder, like, threat actors go, ooh, we were called this, we have that name. And so how much do they do? I mean, they have a business to run. They have literally a business model. So some of them couldn't care less. But, some of them probably are like, ooh, we're Fancy Bear. Oh, we're Tropic Spider or something, and it's almost like Mega Man X characters, like Chill Penguin, and so it's just like, wow, what are we trying to accomplish here? And do we really want to have all these threat actors, as our heroes, our action heroes and things, I don't know. They didn't have a threat actor. At least I don't know what their threat actor name is for the Equation Group, because they are a threat actor. The Equation Group is a threat actor out there.
Well, if anybody has photos of these toys in the offices of the threat actors, please send them to Odd Jobs.
That's right. Links to the dark web, please. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the only thing I saw that was kind of interesting. That I'm like, I don't know if I like this. Like, they're cool threat actors. It would be cool if this was just a cartoon.
Sure.
But they're talking about real life people doing real life harm to people. When we're talking about hospitals getting shut down and people being turned away for even elective surgeries. Right. Now they're going to be in pain for longer or whatever. These people aren't good people.
No. So I had not even thought of that. But yes, glorifying people who may have caused death and certainly a lot of pain and financial woe. It would be like having your own Al Capone action figure.
Right? Yeah. As much as we like The Godfather and we're cheering on Michael, we're cheering on Vito, and things like that.
Look, it's The Godfather in the Valentine's Day Massacre. We have the whole element.
But at the end of the day, you realize, these people are, and you see it through the movie too. There's a bit of glorification, but then it also at the same time balanced it with, these people are people who murder and straight up do these things, and as much as they're a family, they don't think anything twice of whacking you the next day if it's good for business.
Yep.
And so, how much are we doing that? And think of the children and how much are we glorifying these threat actors. And I think it is good fun. That's really what the core of it is. It's good marketing and everything. But there is just kind of a matter of just like, are we cheering on the threat actors a little too much here? But yeah, I mean, that's been my Vegas so far. That's been Hacker Summer Camp for me. Any kind of parting words or closing comments there on just the whole kind of summary of everything?
Yeah, well, so if you haven't been, and your boss won't approve it, just watch your word. It is worth going, but I don't know I'd go to this one as my first one. I think I would go to a regional one. To kind of put my toes in the water. If you're looking to go to your first con, I'd go there. And yes, as quickly as you can, learn the social networking aspect of these, because that's truly the golden nugget that you get to take home is relationships. And those relationships can be so important to your career, to your life. I mean, my emotional batteries get recharged just from hanging out with people like you, right? And just being able to commiserate and share war stories and laugh. And
IRC still exists, but even 10 years ago, I was on IRC chatting with different people. And these conferences had IRC chats. You also had other hacker groups and things that had IRC chats. Then they kind of moved to Slack, and then Slack was like, Discord's the place now. Discord's the place for all your community stuff. So go try to find a Discord, a hacker Discord. Like I'm part of the Hacker Republic.
So nice.
That's a fairly big. They do a lot of different study groups, and for a lot of the certifications and different things like that. They do try hack me or hack the box sessions where they'll just go through and screen share and do a thing together. So shout out to Hacker Republic. But go find some Discord communities. Find one that's not toxic. Find one that works for you. And that's a great way, because a lot of conferences were people on IRC who then got to meet together, or back in the day BBS, who got together and like, oh yeah, I know you. You're Sandy Fuzzy whatever 572. And oh yeah, cool. And then we all thought you were a woman. Because it's every person who claims to be a woman back in those days was you're a man.
Right.
Rules the internet. Anyway. internet's changed so much, and but and for the better, I think. But anyway,
and if I could make one, can I make a shameless plug?
You can totally make a shameless plug.
So I've been doing sort of security advisory work. We're calling it like field CTO, field CISO. These days, and I am one of the many thousands that have been recently laid off. So, if you like what you see, hit me up on LinkedIn, Robert Wagner. I'd love to have a conversation.
Yeah, and hit up your local B-Sides. Look at B-Side Security to see what your local local shops or local cons are coming up. Find a Discord community.
Volunteer if you can. That's a great
way to get in for free.
Yeah.
If you can't afford the $50 or whatever it is to get into your local cons, a lot of times you can just volunteer and get a free ticket that way. Yeah. Usually a cool shirt or something, maybe a coin or maybe something kind of cool tchotchke. But yeah, great advice. And I think this has been I think it's always a fun. I always have fun in Vegas, whether I'm usually 80% not on a con, so I'm usually doing other things, meeting with people like you. So, but yeah, what do you think? Have you been to DEF CON? Have you not been to DEF CON? What has this made you think about coming or going to your favorite cons? Tell us what your favorite cons are down in the comments, and catch us on social media. And I'll see you in the next one.